place to do it. Travel reporter John Bartell here. You know, there's nothing like a day at the beach. And here in California, there's over 840 miles of coastline to explore. So whether you're swimming, fishing, or just enjoying the sand, there's no shortage of things to do. But if you're here in La Jolla, in San Diego County, I highly suggest renting a kayak and checking out the sea caves. Just watch out for the sea creatures below. Just north of San Diego, along the La Jolla coastline, there's a series of cliffside caves guarded by an assortment of sea creatures. The caves are no secret, as they lie under a series of multi-million-dollar homes, but getting a look inside those caves is a bit challenging.
All right, you ready?
I got wet underwear now.
All you, let's see what you got.
That is, unless you have a kayak and an experienced guide like Brody Savage.
No seasickness yet? Well, let me know if you are, because it doesn't get better. You can't really fight it.
Brody will not only get you to the caves, but he'll also help you navigate through the zoo of sea creatures. And the first you'll most likely come across are the migrating leopard sharks.
During the summer, there will be thousands of them here.
It takes about 20 minutes to paddle to the caves. Along the way, Brody explains how they were formed.
So the waves slowly erode these caves, whereas that cliffside over there, if it hits a good spot, the whole cliff will fall down.
Brody says a fault line in the Earth's crust is pushing up two different types of sandstone, and the waves erode each type of sandstone differently. The Hoya Caves are made from a strong sandstone that erodes away like Swiss cheese, but the sandstone underneath the multi-million-dollar homes is soft.
What do you guys think that means for these houses over here? They're going down, right? These houses are all condemned. Not condemned, but they are condemned by the city of San Diego to fall in at one point in time.
Back in 2023, a bluff collapsed at Torrey Pines State Beach, sending parts of the cliff into the ocean. In 2015, a part of the bluff also collapsed, causing major damage to this home's pool. You know what else is living on the edge? A colony of seabirds, like cormorants and pelicans, who painted the bluff in what's known as San Diego snow. What is all this white stuff up there?
That would be our San Diego snow. Anyone, did you smell it yet? Yeah, it's bird poop.
Right below the bird's poop deck lives a school of brightly colored orange Garibaldis, which is the official marine state fish of California. Why are they so bright?
They actually start off as like a little blue tint, and they gain that color over time by secreting the urine through their scales.
So essentially, if you're eating the skin on this fish, you're eating the pee?
Yep, pretty gross.
Once you get by all those sea creatures, we pass by the Sunny Jim's Cave, a partially man-made cave that you can access by entering the cave store on top of the cliff. I did a separate Backroads episode on the odd history if you want to watch it.
You guys ready? We're gonna go get into a cave just right around the corner over here, okay?
The moment finally came when Brody took us inside one of the sea caves. The ocean was a little rough, so he got in the water and swam us through the small entrance. Inside the cave, you can see the years of erosion up close.
These caves are estimated to be around 75 million years old.
Paddling through the La Jolla Caves is an exciting and enlightening experience, but if you ask me, the journey to the caves is just as special. If you ever wanted to snowboard but don't like the cold, try sandboarding. The Oceaniano Dunes in San Luis Obispo County are the perfect place to learn. No frostbite, just a little sand in your shorts. Shaped by the Central California coastal winds is a vast sandbox known as the Oceaniano Dunes. Trudging up these 200-foot tall sand piles can be a daunting task. But if you have a sandboard, you can cover a lot more ground. If you're unfamiliar with the sport of sandboarding, you're not alone. I too was unaware. Show him in there, huh? Lucky for me, me, the kind folks over at the Oceaniano Surf Shack set me up with a sandboard and introduced me to one of the pioneers of this sandy sport.
My buddy and I, Gary Flewitt, kind of pioneered what we call modern sandboarding.
Okay.
Sandboarding's been around since ancient Egypt.
In the 1980s, Jack Smith helped introduce the world to sandboarding in the Scott Dietrich film Adventures in Paradise.
Sandboarding and snowboarding have a lot of crossover to them. You know, snowboarding is nice because you have the lifts. You don't have that in sandboarding.
But what's nice about here is you don't get very cold.
You don't get cold. You look at us, we're all in shorts.
Unlike snowboards, sandboards don't need any special boots or bindings. However, they do share one important similarity. You need to apply wax to the bottom of the board to ensure a smooth ride down the hill. This is
just
wax,
paraffin wax from the grocery store.
Okay, candle wax almost.
Yeah.
Just like snowboarding, the wax makes your sandboard go faster. All right, ready or not, here we go. Yeah! Yeah! But unlike snowboarding, the sand is much harder than the snow. And when you're ready to head back up to the top of the dunes, there's no chairlift to take you there. You'll just have to make the climb on foot.
I mean, if you're going to be serious about it, you spend a lot more time walking up than you do going down.
One man trying to make the world of sandboarding more appealing is Lon Beal.
I'm known all over the internet as Dr. Dune, the inventor of sandboarding.
Lon, aka Dr. Dune, was building sandboards as a kid in the 1960s and 70s. He loved it so much that he started selling sandboards. Then in 2000, he opened up Sandmaster Park in Florence, Oregon, which is the only sandboarding specific sport park in the US. Unfortunately, there's still no chairlifts here either.
We go to the big dunes, we take dune buggies to the top, we don't hike it. But on the smaller coastal dunes, the hike up's pretty easy.
No matter how you look at it, sandboarding is a physical sport, but it's one that almost anyone can pick up, as long as there's a sandy dune nearby. Sea caves, ocean pinnacles, and cliffside erosion, California's coast is full of geological wonders. But the strangest formations I've ever seen is a cluster of bowling ball-shaped boulders that emerge from the tide just below Point Arena in Mendocino County. The sandy cliff sides of Schooner Gulch State Beach offer some stark views along Highway 1. But if you take the steep staircase down the gulch and do a little rock climbing to the water's edge, you'll end up next to a row of spherical boulders.
That's just wild.
The boulders are round like bowling balls, but way too big for humans to pick up, posing the question, how did they get here?
There's mystery around it. I mean, it could be aliens, right?
There's been a lot of speculation on how the bowling ball-shaped rocks ended up here, but state park interpreter Steve Yahelka assures me that aliens had nothing to do with it.
You know, as the water is washing over them over and over again, it just is forming these perfect spheres.
Erosion. That's what's shaping the rocks around here, and erosion is revealing a geological phenomenon known as concretion, or the compression of sedimentary rocks.
They compress. It's just pretty much compressed sand.
The towering cliffside above Bowling Ball Beach is actually highly compressed sand, and every once in a while, pieces of the compressed sand break off and land on the beach. Over millions of years, the pounding waves erode the sandy rocks into smooth balls.
Yeah, if you're a geology nerd, tell you what, it's a place for you.
There's only a handful of places in the world that create rock structures like this. It's a great place to hike and take pictures, but remember, you can only experience the rocks at Bowling Ball Beach at low tide, so check a tide chart before you go. Well, you want to bring your camera to this Marin County beach. The Point Reyes shipwreck in Inverness has a great backstory and attracts thousands of photographers and sightseers every year. Located in the little town of Inverness in Marin County is the SS Point Reyes shipwreck. It was once the victim of treacherous waters of Tomales Bay. Now the SS Point Reyes is a photographer's dream.
This day is absolutely gorgeous. We've got just a few puffy clouds. Going to do some long exposures after a while and get the clouds drifting by.
After this fishing boat ran aground, it was dragged to its current location where it was supposed to be repaired. Instead, the land that the ship sits on was purchased and turned into a wetland reserve.
Just the name, Point Reyes. Sir Francis Drake, a lot of history in this area.
The SS Point Reyes was supposed to be removed, but local photographers fought to keep it the tourist attraction that it is today.
Usually morning light and evening light is better. During the middle of the day, you get this beautiful haze.
The ship is accessible during low tide, but be careful. The wood is rotting and the stern of the ship was set on fire by vandals back in 2017. Sex on the beach. That's exactly what's happening along this stretch of Los Angeles coast. Every full moon, tiny finger-length fish called grunion wiggle their way out of the ocean and onto the sand, putting on a fascinating dance show before mating right on the beach. When the moon and the tide is just right in Los Angeles County, flocks of black-crowned night herons start to gather along the shores in San Pedro.
So this is Cabrillo Beach, outer Cabrillo Beach.
That's also when Jim DePompe heads to the beach.
So we have a permit this evening to collect about 10 grunion fish so that we can try and keep them in captivity.
Jim is with the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, and tonight a small group of curious spectators have come to help him catch the protected grunion fish.
Very exciting. I've always wanted to come to one of these, and now I've been able to show up, so it's like the best thing ever for me.
Jim doesn't use a net, a fishing pole, or a boat for that matter.
Now we're coming here. Okay, this is good. Now we're building.
And that's because the grunion fish come to him.
But if you look out in the water, you'll see there's even more grunion out there, shining in the water out there, just waiting to come up onto the beach.
You are witnessing the annual grunion run. These little 6-inch swimmers are among the only fish in the world who beach themselves on purpose. And it's all in the name of love.
Well, it is sex on the beach.
The love session you are witnessing only takes place between the months of February and August. It only happens a few nights a year, and the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium invites the public to witness what quite possibly could be the oddest mating ritual in the marine world.
So here we have a couple females dug in the sand. Here we have a male wrapped around the female. That male is depositing milt.
You mentioned the word milt. What is milt?
It's just another name for sperm.
Sperm, okay, yeah. All right. To better explain what is going on below the sand, Jim took me inside the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium.
And as you add the water, you should see the eggs pop out of the sand.
Jim says grunion need to lay eggs and fertilize them in dry sand, and the only way to do that is when the moon is just right and the tide is at its highest.
And it knows when it's the new moon and full moon, and it comes up a couple of days after the new moon and the full moon.
During the full moon and high tide, the grunion lay and fertilize eggs. When the tide starts to recede, those grunion eggs start to develop. It's literally just kind of happening in my hand here. Here's where the magic happens. 10 to 15 days later, a new moon brings back the high tide again, and the water triggers the eggs to hatch.
And then eventually the water will reach it again and remove the sand, and the little babies will hatch out.
Grunion is easy prey for birds, and that's one reason they're protected. Humans can fish for grunion, but the season has strict regulations and only lasts a few days a year.
And she can be out of water for 5-10 minutes or so and just be totally fine.
Lucky for these grunion, they're headed to the aquarium, where they'll be studied and displayed to the public for educational purposes.
They're very unique. They're the only known fish that digs in the sand out of the water to lay their eggs.
Well, up next on our tour of California beaches, we head over to Marin County for a one-of-a-kind culinary experience. The Tamales Bay is premier oyster habitat, and the Hog Island Oyster Company took me out and showed me how they were farmed. This is the Hog Island Oyster Fields, and John Finger is the co-founder and farmer.
The technical term is a mariculturist.
A mariculturist.
So in aquaculture, right? You talk about aquaculture. Mariculture is aquaculture in the sea.
John knows a thing or two about the oyster business. He and his partner, Terry Sawyer, planted the first oyster seeds in this very spot back in 1983.
You know, we get growth almost year-round here, but see this leading edge? That's like putting another ring down of a tree.
An oyster is a mollusk, but in a way, they're a lot like a tree. When they're young, oysters go through a seed stage, and when they grow up, they filter water, just like a tree filters air. So these guys are actually cleaning the water.
Yes, exactly. You know, there's a lot of areas of the world now where they're trying to to put more oysters back into bays just for the purposes of making the bay healthier.
After about 2 years of cleaning the Tamales Bay, the Hog Island oysters take a vacation of sorts. If you ask me, the best part of oyster harvest is quality control. When does an oyster become not fresh? How many days?
I mean, generally about 4 to 5 days if you keep them well iced or refrigerated.
After shucking the oyster, it's customary to give the meat a little flip in the shell before flicking it in your mouth.
And then if you need to, you can give a little finger skip. Yep. Taste the ocean.
It's salty.
It's the merroir.
The merroir. Merroir is just a fancy word for the location that the oysters were grown in.
Oysters will be reflective of whatever bay they're grown in.
The time and the tide wait for no one in the Tamales Bay. And because of that, the unique taste of its waters is reflected in the oysters that live here. So the next time you slurp down an oyster, remind yourself how hard it was to harvest them. 200 miles north of San Francisco, there's a remote state park located inside of California's Lost Coast region. It's known as the Sinkion Wilderness, and it's one of the few stretches of coastline left undeveloped and unchanged since the California Gold Rush. Shaped by earthquakes and pounded by waves and fog, this place is so rugged that paved roads couldn't be built here. In fact, the only way to explore this state park is to drive down a very bumpy and windy one-lane dirt path. As rugged as this drive is, it is honestly just gorgeous. We're in like a rainforest right now. The wilderness is the main attraction at this state park, and it's not uncommon for a herd of Roosevelt elk to be grazing or resting in the limited parking spaces.
There aren't a lot of amenities here. It's part of what makes this place beautiful.
Other than the rustic visitor center and a few camping spots, Park Ranger Marnin Robbins says the land here looks almost the way it did when the Sinkion tribe lived here.
They were able to keep this wonderful standard of living here for so long through their tending of this landscape. It was a Garden of Eden.
For more than 1,000 years, the ocean provided the Sinkion with much of their food and the forest with much of their shelter. But when gold was discovered in California, the Sinkion's way of life was taken from them.
There was an idea of manifest destiny, that this place belonged to the white man.
In the 1950s, settlers began logging the Sinkion's land. A conflict with the tribe led to the Needle Rock Massacre. The settlers slaughtered many of the Sinkion tribe members.
It was a dark time in our history, and it's important for people to know that, and to also realize that those Native people are still here with us today, and that we have a lot to learn from them.
Hiking trails throughout the park take you through the Sinkion's territory. There's little trace of the settlers' old logging camps left, and that's because the plants and animals have reclaimed the land. You know, if you ever wanted to contemplate some big things in life, this is definitely the place to do it. The Sinkion Wilderness is a marine protected area, home to birds, fish, and whales, all of which you can see if you're patient and respectful.
This is a transformational place. There's very few places, especially in California, where you can have a true feeling of solitude.
Often overlooked by those driving by, the Sir Lighthouse offers amazing views of California's coastline. And let me tell you, you're gonna get your steps in for the day on this beautiful tour. It's easy to get distracted by the beautiful coastal scenery and pass by the poorly marked lock gate at Sir.
People come all the time and say, you know, I've driven by this for 30 years. I've never come up here.
But if you join any one of the weekly tours, the Central Coast Lighthouse Keepers group will open up the gates and take you inside.
So here's 61 steps that the Coast Guard put in for us.
Built in 1889, the Sir Lighthouse protected cargo and passenger ships from the rocky, shallow waters along the Monterey coastline.
You could see the flash of this light 23.5 miles because that's where the horizon is.
A large electric light rotates at the top of the lighthouse today, but in the beginning, the lighthouse keepers had a much more primitive way of signaling ships.
It started out as a wick, 5 wicks, and that's why they call these guys wickies. They would light that and trim it and make it a nice bright light.
Just a warning, the lighthouse tours involve a fair amount of walking, which gives you an idea of what lighthouse keepers had to do on a daily basis. Their living quarters were pretty simple back then. Before Highway 1 was built, there was no electricity, and the plumbing was primitive.
John, this is what we call the privy slab. Back in the day, there was an outhouse on here. There was a hole there, and everything just went out to the ocean.
The job of a lighthouse keeper was tough and lonely, but extremely important. Ships still use the lighthouse beacon today, but the beacon no longer requires a keeper.
Yeah, this whole rock and all the buildings, everything, are now taken care of with this one solar panel and these LEDs.
A walk on the beach can be romantic, but the bike ride lets you cover a lot more ground. If you want to see all of Monterey County's Pebble Beach, I recommend renting an electric bike and cruising along the picturesque 17-mile drive. It's arguably one of the most celebrated scenic roads in California. On one side of the road is world-class golfing and homes that only the rich can afford. On the other is unforgettable coastal views and wildlife. It'll cost you $11.25 to drive a car on 17-mile drive, but if you're on an electric bike, it's free. You know, the best part about the e-bike is, if you get tired, you don't have to pedal.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I don't have an e-bike, so I took a tour with Florendo Salas from Big Sur Adventures in Pacific Grove. So they call it 17-mile drive. I mean, is it really 17 miles?
It's really 17 miles, yeah.
Before the expensive homes and the golf courses, Pebble Beach was a sand mine owned by the Pacific Improvement Company, which was a consortium of railroad barons.
And so they came in, they brought the railroads all the way up to here, and they created a sand plant that essentially took all of the dunes that were here.
In 1892, 17-Mile Drive was built, and it was built for 2 reasons. First, to provide activity for the wealthy guests staying at the Hotel Del Monte in Monterey, and 2, to sell land near the newly constructed golf courses.
17-Mile Drive was basically created as an opportunity to show people the real estate that the Pacific Improvement Company owned along this section of coastline.
As time went on, more money was pumped into development, and people from all over the world started taking tours of 17-Mile Drive to experience the amenities and natural wonders of Pebble Beach. Wonders like the beaches and the vibrant blue water, which is unique to the Monterey coast.
So the beaches along Pebble Beach are just quartz crystals. That's that beautiful white sand. When you get the sunlight reflecting off those crystals down below, we get these blues, we get these greens, and this is just, it's gorgeous.
Tourists aren't the only ones attracted to Pebble Beach. Marine animals like seals, otters, whales, and migrating birds call this stretch of ocean home. Is that snow all over that rock there? Is that what that is?
No snow here.
And a great spot to see some of those marine animals is at the iconic white-colored Bird Rock.
Come here 100 years ago, there would have been a lot more white stuff on there. Okay. So in the 1930s, they actually came out and harvested all of the guano, basically all the bird poop, off of this rock because, well, that's a great fertilizer. And what do you have around us? A lot of lawn, right? Golf courses everywhere.
Just a few miles from Bird Rock is another icon at Pebble Beach, the lone cypress.
One of the most photographed, I think, in the country is what they say now, yeah. Possibly the world. I can't imagine there's another tree that gets more recognition than this.
Holding on for dear life at the edge of a rocky spire, the lone cypress is estimated to be more than 250 years old and is among the last of California's old-growth Monterey cypress.
This is it, yeah. This is the last place on the planet that they've been able to find a way to survive.
These wind-beaten trees can survive gale-force storms and pounding waves, but they require the unique foggy climate that only the Monterey coast can provide.
What that does is as the fog runs through these trees, they're able to actually gather that moisture and precipitate down, and during the summer months, these trees will basically water themselves.
Monterey cypress only live about 300 years, and the old-growth Monterey cypress at Pebble Beach are nearing the end of their life. But had it not been for the protections put in place by developers at Pebble Beach, the wildlife and the trees
may have been lost.
And so it's one of those things that it's here for now, but it's not forever. And it's just one of those, you know, a reminder for us, I think, of the impermanence here on the coast and also how wild the coast is.
Well, thanks for watching Bartell's Backroads Special Edition California Beaches. I hope it's inspired you to take a road trip of your own. I'm John Bartell. Hope to see you on the Backroads.